Hello, little owlets. Well, September is almost here as I record this, and then we'll be moving into eclipse season. So we're going to start feeling the eclipse energy coming in October, and that is taking us to eclipses that will be. There's a new moon eclipse on October the 14th at 21 Libra, solar new moon eclipse, which I'm actually going to see, and that's an annual one, and lunar partial eclipse on October the 28th at 5 Taurus. So these eclipses, planetary wise, have the nodes in Libra and Aries, but they are spanning the signs. These lunar eclipses kind of finishing up the Taurus Scorpio eclipses, but more on those in October. I just wanted to point out that you will be feeling this energy coming, especially if you have any planets or angles around 21 degrees of cardinal signs. And so that's Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, or 5 degrees of fixed signs, which is Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. But let's stick to September for now, okay? And so let's get the chart up and start looking at what we've got coming up. So I'm just going to get it to September the 1st, and then I will share it. But while I get that up, I would like to say that, we've got, within the first 2 weeks, we've got Sedna stationing retrograde, Venus stationing direct, Jupiter stationing retrograde, and Mercury stationing direct. So we've got a lot of that kind of change energy coming again as well. But let's dive in and talk about all of that. Okay, so we're here September the 1st. We actually start the whole month on Venus Day, Friday. I've got my lovely roses for Venus stationing direct because my Venus retrograde class will be coming to an end. I wait 19 months for these things, and then it ends and I start waiting another 19 months. It's been off the charts though, but let's dive into this. So we kind of start the month with Sedna stationing retrograde. So Sedna is over here. She moved into the sign of Gemini, and she never left the 0-degree mark. And so she's sat giving us a taste of what's coming in Gemini, which has been very much about changes in perceptions, a lot of life-changing news, a lot of information coming out, particularly scientific information. So that actually happened at 1 a.m. So literally did start the month off with Sedna stationing retrograde. Now, the only reason I'm mentioning this because Sedna has an 11,408-year orbit, but she is now going to retrograde back into Taurus briefly, and move back into Taurus just to kind of mop up and finish her 11,408-year time in Taurus. And then she's going to move into Gemini finally. So we've been getting a taste of what's coming, and it's partly connected to a lot of the air energy that we have that came from the great mutation of Jupiter and Saturn at 0 Aquarius, that came with the new Libra Venus star point that occurred on October the 22nd, 2022. That's going to bring in over 100 years of a Libra star point, and they are all air signs. So we really are entering an age of air in many ways, but I'm not going to really kind of hover on that. I might do a separate thing, writing probably about Sedna a little bit more. But also on September the 1st, the moon moves into the sign of Aries. So later that day, the moon enters Aries for the first 2+ days of the month. So it's kind of got a real kind of new beginnings, new start kind of energy as we enter into the month. Then on September the 2nd, we do have what I consider to be a couple of big aspects. But let's just point out where we are to start with. We start the month with Sedna turning retrograde. Uranus turned retrograde on the 28th of August and is still at exactly the station point. So Uranus is at a standstill, Sedna's at a standstill. We also start the month with Eris retrograde, Chiron retrograde, Neptune retrograde. This is Centaur Nessus retrograde, Saturn still retrograde, Hygeia still retrograde, Chariklos still retrograde, Pluto still retrograde, Pholus, Centaur Pholus is still retrograde. Mercury is retrograde and Venus is retrograde. Now, retrogrades are really a big, major part of cycles. Do not fear retrogrades. Retrogrades are a natural part of the process from our perspective. And really, they are a time to probably more slow, take things a little slower, to reflect and things. But really, unless they're the really quick moving planets, the personal planets, the whole retrograde doesn't really impact us. So these outer planets, it's just the station points. But anyway, we do start with a lot of energy retrograde in the month. And Mercury retrograde is the first aspect we're going to look at. So Mercury is going to oppose Centaur Nessus. And Nessus is about revealing abuses of power. A lot of the things is about Nessus. And the buck stops here. I've had enough. That's what Nessus is about. So here we have Mercury in Virgo opposing Nessus. And I want to quickly show you that Mercury opposed Nessus on August the 13th, which was the day of the new Venus star point in Leo as well. And so news that's been emerging since that time is going to be revisited probably on September the 2nd. And then Mercury will go direct and oppose Nessus again. So really this whole month of Mercury retrograde opposing Nessus is going to be turning up and changing things. And I've talked about that energy of flipping, probably in the Trump case, of people kind of changing their minds, changing their testimony, changing their what they've spoken about is going to keep happening. But anyway, let's go back to that one. So that's going to happen on September the 2nd. At the same time, Neptune, retrograde Neptune over here, is going to square Vesta, the sacred flame of the sacred hearth, in Mercury ruled Gemini, and that's forming a T-square to the galactic center. And really that adds to kind of this revealing truths kind of energy on September the 2nd. Now, moving on quickly. Ooh, don't know what that was. We have another big aspect coming up. Ceres, one of my favorites. Those of you who I've been talking to about my book that's going to take me a few months to research and write, really, to finish putting together. But Ceres has been in Libra for quite some time, and she meets the South Node and opposes the North Node and opposes Eris. This is going to bring some real shakeups. Okay. Ceres will actually conjunct the South Node a little bit after this, but this is the opposition to Eris. And this is bringing this these nodal aspects to a peak. If you notice, the moon is actually there as well. We're going to kind of get some things that really rattle us about where we're not nurturing and nourishing our relationships and peace and harmony and things like that. Eris tends to kind of shake tables a little bit and just reveal where things about people. So you're getting a bit of a theme here. Okay. And Ceres is about grief and loss as well. So there may be some grief that comes up around what's being revealed in these first few days of September. Now, if you notice as well, this Ceres South Node conjunction is actually really forming this mystic rectangle. We've got a lot of energy again at the last 5 degrees of these signs, and these are cardinal and mutable signs. So this is kind of bringing a lot of change yet again, because they're all speaking to each other around those degrees. But Ceres on the South Node, particularly with the South Node being the releasing end, is, you know, it's about that letting go of that debilitating niceness, saying, you know, this is what I'm really grief-stricken about. And this is, you know, what I really want to do to nurture and nourish our relationships in future, and to nourish peace and harmony and justice as well in Libra. So that's going to be quite a big shakeup, with Ceres opposing Eris and then coming up to conjunct the South Node. But at the same time as this happens, the moon's going to move into Taurus. So I just wanted to bring that out. So we started with Aries, now the moon's moving into Taurus. But Mercury as well, during the retrograde on September the 3rd, is at perigee, which means closest to Earth. So Neptune, Mercury retrograde is really kind of when planets are retrograde, that means they're closer to Earth. All right. And this time, you know, this is Mercury. Mercury's close to Earth. Things, you know, are really going to be revealed. So everything's kind of adding up to that energy. But also what's changing on that day is that Venus is stationing direct on September the 3rd. Let's get it exactly. So that's going to be at 9:20 p.m. Eastern. So for many of you, it'll be early on September the 4th. Now, I'm very excited about the numbers for this, and I'll probably write more in the blog that day. But this is 1212. And 12, we have 12 signs. We have 12 houses. 12 is an astrological number. It is kind of this number of this collective that we live in, okay? And it goes to my real big feeling that this Venus retrograde has been so important, okay? It's been a real energy of how do we want to lead with the heart? What do we want to create? How are we being a good role model and example as well in Leo? This is really about stepping up to wholeness. And, you know, we can always ignore these kind of energies, but I think there's been a big message of this. I'm not going to go into all the aspects. I'll probably do, well, I'll write something about it on the day. But I do want to mention one thing, is that Neptune and the galactic center are in this ongoing square that's really going to last until 2025, when Neptune moves into Aries. And this is forming a Thor's hammer, pointing right at Venus. This is asteroid Hecate. This is asteroid Juno, saying and bringing new truth in from the galactic center, the center of our galaxy, and Neptune in Pisces, bringing in new spiritual truths, kind of smiting at Venus, saying, have you learned that love is the way? There's so many things pointing to that wholeness and love and caring, and bringing in a more circular kind of way of leadership is the way forward. I do hope we're listening. Then on to September the 5th. we have Mercury is still retrograde. Mercury is going to trine Jupiter as Jupiter stations. Oh, this is funny. So on September the 4th, Jupiter will station retrograde. Right before Jupiter stations retrograde, retrograde Mercury will trine Jupiter. Big change energy again in Earth signs. There may be some news or changing perspectives as well around earthly matters and around what it means to be holistically healthy and holistically healthy with the earth. So, and also there could be changes in fortunes, really. So, yeah, you get the idea. and this is at Jupiter's stationing retrograde that same day at a world point. So much more changes and much more news, much more revelation. But I think this will be more around material matters and money matters. You could have a lot of people having some shifts in fortune. Now it's a trine, so it's more supportive. But as I've talked about before, trines are not always good and squares are not always bad. Squares are impetus to change. This often takes, trines often take the easiest route, the way the way of ease, and things tend to slide a little and so on. So, you know, that's kind of quite a big trine on September the 4th as Jupiter is stationing retrograde. So you can see that this is at 6:29 a.m. Jupiter actually stations retrograde at 10:10 a.m. Eastern as well. So really closely happening together. Then to kind of complete that Ceres story, Ceres is actually going to conjunct the South Node later that day as well. So more of what I was talking about with the Eris. Look at this. And this is all at 7 degrees, by the way. 2 + 5 is a 7. That's what I mean. And we're in a 7-year, which is a kind of a little bit tower cardy. It's the most spiritual number, but we are really, overall, in this year, we have been called to really start stepping up and having what I would call a spiritual upgrade of kind of thinking, feeling the interconnectedness of really coming from a place of love and being more kind as well. That's a big thing as well. One other thing I want to show you that's building, and I will talk about it as we look at the aspects, is that we have a mutable grand cross building as Pallas Athena comes up to oppose Neptune, then square Vesta, and more change. That's kind of enforced change, saying, yes, you are going to change, right? Oh, we're in such amazing times, to be quite honest. So on to September the 5th. The moon will move into Gemini on September the 5th. We'll finish up in Taurus. But the biggest aspect on September the 5th is Mars in Libra, who's been pretty quiet since moving into the sign of Libra. Mars is going to come up, and he's in Libra, the sign of peace and justice, is going to square Pholus. And Pholus is also going to station direct this month. So he's virtually at a standstill as well. And when planets are at their station points, their effect tends to grind in a little bit and be more impactful. And Pholus is really the domino effect. He's kind of the Pandora's box of centaurs. And in Capricorn, he's really been kind of following along with Pluto. Pluto's been revealing the corruption. And then when Pholus came in, he's like taking the lid off it. He's going to be in Capricorn for quite some time. But at the moment, he is stationing to turn direct, and Mars squares Pholus, and Mars is in the sign of justice. And so it's, more revelations. Oh boy. And then we move on to September the 6th. And that's the day that Neptune will oppose Pallas Athena, really kind of bringing this mutable grand cross or grand square into focus, bringing very much change. But we have the cazimi of Mercury right on this day too. So at 7:09 a.m. Eastern, that's when the cazimi's exact. It will probably, begin around midnight on that day. I haven't worked out the exact time, and last for a few hours after 7:09 a.m. This is kind of when Mercury is in the throne of the galaxy or the solar system, in the throne of the very core of our energy. Now, 13 degrees. As I record this, I'm recording this on August the 27th. We've just had Venus conjunct Hecate at 13 degrees of Leo. 13 is really the number of the goddess in so many ways. It's also the number 12 with us in the middle. It's, it's circular. I told you we're being called to start working differently, working more collaboratively, working more in this kind of talking stick kind of energy. And the divine feminine is rising to be equal. Back in Roman times, before the Caesars really took over, the emperors really took over, they had what was called Dei Consentes of gods and goddesses, where they had 6 gods, 6 goddesses. It's kind of like King Arthur's Round Table, only with equal gods and goddesses. And this is what I feel. I've been talking about this for a long time. I feel we're coming in to this time more like that. But we had Venus and Hecate kind of coming together, bringing in heaven, hell, and this earth, or the shamanic realms, the underworld, the middle world, and the upper world, all within us, bringing it together. And with Hecate showing us that the way forward is to forgive and reunite and come together and bring everything into wholeness. And then now we have Mercury and the Sun at 13 degrees as well. This is very astounding to me because Venus and Mercury have been retrograde together for the latter part of Venus's retrograde. And both of them have these crucial points at 13 degrees. And there's one more that we'll see as we move forward. But anyway, this is the middle of the retrograde, Mercury retrograde, often a moment of dazzling clarity of what's being revealed and where you're going to move forward during the Mercury retrograde. On the same day, on September the 6th, the moon is now over here in Gemini, and we have, whilst, I'm just going to actually, so that's at 7:09 a.m. And then later that day, when Mercury and the Sun are separating, they're now already more than a degree apart because they're moving in opposite directions from our perspective. We actually have the last quarter moon coming towards the next new moon on September the 14th, which I'll be also doing a video about. But this is the last quarter, the crisis in consciousness. So if you kind of think about where we're at on September the 6th, we've had all this revelation kind of energy, this kind of Pandora's box opened. And now we've got this crisis of consciousness, which is a crossroads in 2 Mercury-ruled signs. Gemini and Virgo, it's kind of like, okay, what are we going to do with all of this now? What are we going to change with all this stuff that's been revealed? And then I'm actually just going to move us now right onto September the 8th. So by September the 8th, the moon will move out of Gemini and into Cancer. And then the sun comes up and trines Jupiter. Then Jupiter's, just literally just stationed retrograde. So he's still pretty much at a standstill. And this is repeating the Mercury trine to Jupiter that was on the day, September the 4th, that Jupiter stationed retrograde. So can you see how this is kind of building up? So things that kind of shifted and perspective changes and revelations that occurred on September the 4th, the sun and Jupiter are now looking at each other and saying, all right, what do we need to change? What do we need to create? What do we need to make out of this that is meaningful and useful? On the same day, September the 8th, Venus, now direct, creeping forward, will oppose asteroid Hygeia, the seer, preventative health, in the sign of Aquarius. If we look at Hygeia, really, I'm figuring out that she's not just about our physical health, she's about overall health. And this is in Aquarius, which is the sign of the people. It is the sign of, humanitarian, what we do for the good of all people. So Venus, her first exact aspect after she's turned direct, is opposing Hygeia, saying, what can we do? What preventative health-wise? How can we see into the future to see what we can create to create better, more holistic health collectively? Okay, on to September the 9th. Now then, the sun over here is now going to follow what Mercury did on the way retrograde and oppose Nessus. So, we're getting these repeats. And now the sun looks at Nessus and says, all right, what action are we going to take? What do we feel into our core that we need to do with what's being revealed about these abuses of power? And this can be where you've abused your power a little bit too. So, don't only think of it in terms of the bigger picture, but, where have you been a little bit out of integrity? Virgo's very much about integrity. There's a lot going on at the moment with these oppositions about in Leo coming from the heart and following a more loving way of being, and that includes loving yourself, but then also about doing the right thing and being in integrity. It's been an ongoing effort. So now on to September the 10th, Venus is going to conjunct the asteroid that I kind of like to call the flower of Venus. So you can see the goddess of the crossroads, Hecate, the lady with the carries the lamp, guiding the way, is leading the way forward for now. She's coming up to conjunct Black Moon Lilith, by the way, but here we have Venus and Juno coming together, both relationship energy, but one is kind of the maiden and one is kind of the queen of the gods, the married woman in Juno, and they are coming together to say we have to start loving ourselves, loving each other in a love is action kind of way, and being more loving leaders, setting good examples, shining, radiating in Leo, radiating our heart and our light out to the world in a bigger way. This has been an ongoing theme as well for this Venus retrograde. On September the 10th as well, the moon will move into Leo for a couple of days. But one of the other big aspects we've got is Ceres is moving towards the end of Libra. Ceres, the great mother, grief, loss, forgiveness, what nourishes us, what feeds us, what our needs are. Ceres comes up and squares off to Pluto. And really, this is all happening together. Ceres is going to conjunct Haumea in a couple of days after this. And this is activating what I've called the aspect of the decade. Pluto square Haumea. They've got 8 more squares to do, but they've had their 4th of 13 total. Is that right? Yeah. 4th of 13 squares. There's that 13 again, which is really birthing a new paradigm. They will not finish squaring each other till the end of the decade. 2008 is the last exact square between Pluto and Haumea. Future squares after this year will be in the sign of Aquarius and Scorpio, which are fixed signs, which is about making things real, doing new things. I've got a lot to say about that, but I'll talk about that later. But Ceres coming up to Haumea and squaring Pluto is saying, you know, we have to do things differently. One thing that's come to mind for me with all this energy is that Haumea is the creation goddess of Hawaii. She is pure creation. She's the mother of all the gods of Hawaii. And she even birthed Pele and things. And she was quite connected to the fires in Maui. Tragic. And I'm not saying they happened for a purpose, but it's what can we take from that? There's a lot of talk about rebuilding as Indigenous people would, and really letting the Indigenous people recreate Hawaii that's more in alignment with the cycles of the earth, rather than this dominating, controlling energy that has taken over Hawaii, all of the islands really, but this happened to be on Maui. And, you know, I've been talking for a long time about the age of coming new age, the new paradigm, the age of Aquarius, whatever you want to call it, as really learning a lot from Indigenous practices and moving back into alignment. And I think this is a process. Ceres is kind of up there saying to these, we have to change. Maybe we have to learn to do Indigenous fire management practices, for example. We have to learn how Indigenous peoples worked with the land and really start to kind of tuning in a lot more. Anyway, that's my kind of preach for that one. But that's Pluto square. Ceres is on September the 10th, exactly. Then we have, I'm actually going to look at a moon conjunction, which I really don't always look at, but I am going to look at this one. So, moon conjunct. So on September the 11th, the moon will conjunct Venus. And this is an aspect we look at in my membership community. We look at the moon-Venus conjunctions between the star points and work with these chakras and a lot of healing work. But I want you to look at this. 13 degrees again. All right, that number of the goddess. Okay, we've got Venus, the moon, and Juno all meeting there. The divine feminine. Could it get any clearer that you know, the energy that's been maligned for centuries, the energy of the witch, the healer, the divine feminine in all of us is rising. All right, so I love how those three are coming together on September the 11th. So now we're going to flip forward a little bit, actually. Flip forward quite a way. Oh, on to September the 13th. Speaking of the 13th, that number again, we have Pallas Athena is going to move into Libra, and that mutable grand cross that we had is broken up by now. So Pallas Athena will move into the sign of Libra, joining Mars, asteroid Lilith, talk to the hand Lilith, at the South Node, Ceres, and Haumea. All of this line up in Libra, brings a lot of Libra emphasis before the sun even moves into Libra. And this is Pallas Athena is the goddess of wise justice in the sign of justice. She's got those steely grey eyes who meets sometimes harsh justice as well, but she's gonna she's a problem solver. She's creative intelligence. What on earth is she going to bring through her journey through Libra? That's going to be really interesting because she's got just over a 4-year orbit, so she's not been there for a while. So this is quite new energy. Okay. And so also Vesta, which is the goddess of the hearth, but also the hearth of the state, on that same day is going to move into the sign of Cancer. Now, incidentally, both Libra and Cancer are initiating signs. They are cardinal signs. So this is like, I'm going to start something. I'm going to really move things forward. So Vesta move. So we have Pallas Athena's moved into Libra. Now Vesta moves into the sign of Cancer. Really, they're squaring each other on world points as well. So 0 degrees of cardinal signs are world points, and really they start the seasons, but they also start new things. So this is pretty big as well. So, I think this is going to affect a lot of nation states, but it's also going to affect our inner flame. Now on to September the 14th, and Ceres will conjunct Haumea, that goddess of creation. Okay, and this is at 29 degrees of Libra, which is where there was the Venus star point. The first Libra star point was on October the 22nd, 2022. Here we have these two meeting at that point. I have real hope that with all these things as they line up, of course it's a process, but we are really kind of creating something new. There's a video that a guy's videos, I should say, that I've been watching, thanks to somebody in a group I'm in Facebook, an astrology group, and I can't remember his name though. But anyway, he's talking about this phase change we're coming into in so many ways. He talks about it in terms of technology, cars and climate science and food and various other things. And his scientific approach says that we are going into this big phase change, but also I think the astrology really tells us that we're going into this big phase change as well. Let me see if I can continue watching. No, I can't remember his name. But just trust me, this guy has been tracking this for a long time. Even, heads of state and heads of states kind of consult him about things. And he has been right for a long, long time. So, yeah, we're heading into a big phase change, as he calls it, a new age. And he said it's not like doing the old way with an added bit on. It's just everything, big change, the old's going to die out and the new's going to come in. I don't like some of what he predicts, but that's another matter. I don't think we're ever going to like everything, to be honest. So anyway, on September the 14th as well, we have the new moon. And of course, I'll be doing the new moon video for that, the new moon podcast. But one thing I do want to point out is that the sun and moon, the new moon, is at 21 degrees Virgo, where Mercury stationed retrograde, and Mercury is about to station direct just the very next day, September the 15th. And this is, so he's at the degree he's going to station direct at. So, you know, this kind of swapping of degrees is a really interesting thing to me. I kind of think on this new moon, we're really going to get as a new beginning, set intentions. It's a new moon, new start, to create something very new that we've learned about during the Mercury retrograde. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Go into more detail when I do the new moon podcast. On September the 15th, Jupiter and Juno will square off, repeating the Venus Jupiter square as Venus was heading to station direct. You know, this is kind of an ongoing square between all of these energies. But more importantly, on this day, Ceres, the Great Mother, again, she's quite active this month, will move into the watery depths of Scorpio, the fertile grounds of Scorpio. Scorpio is very much related to the reproductive system. And I often think of planets going into there as fertilizing and composting, and almost like going into the caterpillar chrysalis phase, where it all turns to goo, ready to birth something new. So Ceres will move into the sign of Scorpio on this day. And you can see now, by now, Pallas Athena is still at 0 degrees, Vesta's still at 0 degrees, and Ceres is at 0 degrees. And Black Moon Lilith on this day is at 0 degrees, but I use the true and she's going back and forth. New things are really starting to come in. We're starting to see new possibilities. We're starting to see things. We're starting to go, wow, I never even thought that was possible. The 0 in the tarot is the Fool card. It's take a bit of a risk, take a leap as well, and leap into those new possibilities. So we've got a lot of that kind of energy, you know, around the middle of September. On that day as well, the moon will move into Libra and will start to gain light after the new moon. And on September the 15th, Mercury actually stations direct. So now we've got Venus turned direct and Mercury turned direct, leaving really all the retrograde planets around this side of the chart. So most of the personal planets, the really personal planets, are like the Sun, the Moon, Venus, Mercury, Mars, are all up here. They're in these more relationship-oriented signs, and they are opposing some of the more collective signs. It kind of feels like we personally are being, you know, very much birthing new relationships, birthing new ways of dealing with each other and talking to each other. It's quite magical, to be quite honest. On the same day, right after Mercury stations direct, just a couple of hours, about 5 hours afterwards, the Sun is going to trine Uranus. Uranus is now moving. He's past that station point, well past. But, you know, any aspect to Uranus is really going to shake things up a little bit. It's going to be echoes of when Mars trined Uranus as well, towards the end of August. So, you know, it's going to bring up the memories of these things. But that's a little bit kind of like revelation kind of day, another kind of revelation day, I think. So moving on to September the 17th, Venus is going to square Jupiter for the last time. This is her third square to Jupiter. She squared Jupiter once. Well, in fact, let's quickly show you. All right. Oh, I'm sorry, I went and did a trine. Oh, so let's go back to where we're at. So that's the September the 17th one, is the last square. So September the 17th, 2023, Venus now moving, starting to gain speed very quickly. You can see if I hover there, she's still slow, it says here, but she's picking the pace up. We'll have a little look at when she really picks the pace up. But she's going to square off to Jupiter, who's just turned retrograde just a couple of weeks before. And this is at those world points again. But let me show you something. Venus squared Jupiter on August the 22nd. And the first square was June the 11th, before Venus got to the degree she was stationing direct at. At that point, Mars was there, by the way. But this is an ongoing square between the planets that are called the two benefics. I'm not a fan of the term, but this is creation. And in my opinion, Venus and Jupiter also work really well together. They are the law of attraction. Venus is about what we desire. We've been working on our heart's desire and how we desire to be more loving towards ourselves and others during the retrograde. Jupiter is in Venus' home sign of Taurus, which is very earthly, about core values and about stability and sustainability, and also the material world. And the two are working together on these three squares to say, you know, what do we really desire to create from the heart that's really value driven, rather than just kind of following, the ads on television and being told what we want. What do we really want to create? And what do we want to attract? So Venus helps to get in touch with what we really desire based on our core values. And Jupiter is related to natural laws. And so the law of attraction and his expansion. So what do we want to create more of? But I think, don't think in terms of it in like several $1 million unless you want to do some good with it. Think in terms of really core stuff that you want to create. More love, more value-driven life, a more rooted and sustainable way of being. So on to September the 18th, the moon will move into Scorpio, so we're going to move past that one. But on September the 19th, the sun is going to oppose Neptune. And that's going to make a T-square to the galactic center because of that ongoing square. Okay. And you can actually see as well that we actually have a watery grand trine building with Ceres, the Great Mother, Vesta, the Sacred Flame, and retrograde Saturn in Pisces. I'll talk about that in a minute. But the sun opposing Neptune, what have we learned? What have we learned about integrity and meaning from these other aspects that have been building to this? And how are we going to live a more trusting and surrendering and practical and meaningful life? That I could think of Pisces and Virgo as really the practically mystic axis. Thank you to my friend Donnie, who used to call herself the practical mystic. I don't think she does anymore, but it's stuck in my head. And of course, the sun opposes Neptune every year, but Neptune's, there's probably only going to be one more before Neptune leaves the sign of Pisces, and with Neptune being the modern ruler of the sign of Pisces. So we're getting a real good look at it. And we've had that Mercury retrograde in Virgo as well, asking us where we're in integrity, where we really want to have meaning and purpose in our lives, in our work, and do the right thing. Okay, so it's kind of an ongoing thing around that, but it's connected with a higher kind of spiritual life, a more connected life, connected with the collective unconscious, with the mind of God, whatever you want to call it. Okay. So then on to September the 20th. And I mentioned the water trine, grand trine. So, oh dear, Saturn trine. So on the 20th, look at this. Look how strong these lines are now. Ceres, the Great Mother, infertile sign of Scorpio, but also Scorpio's very deep emotionally. I think Ceres' journey through Scorpio is going to take us into a lot of deep emotional places about how we have not nourished and nurtured our deepest emotions and psyche. But this is in a trine to Saturn in Pisces. We've been looking at our limiting beliefs and also leaky boundaries as well has been another feature of this Saturn retrograde in Pisces. But I think for me, what's been coming up with this Saturn in Pisces retrograde is really about letting go of some of our limiting beliefs. And this is water, this is what can we create when we tune right in deep into our emotions. And when we kind of look after our emotional body and do some healing around that, around, blocks and barriers to creating what we really want to create. So that's a lovely water grand trine, in my opinion, that we've got going on during that period. On September the 21st, the sun starts to leave this mutable T-square, a changeable T-square from the galactic center to Neptune in Pisces, which is all about what we have faith and belief in, and new kind of belief systems might be coming in with the galactic center. But I'm actually not even going to change it because the sun is then going to trine Pluto, and Pluto is now back at 27 degrees, which is the degree that he will station direct at, not until October the 10th, but he's back at 27 degrees. It's also the degree of the USA's Pluto. They don't get exact again, but this is going to affect the USA a lot. So it's a trine, kind of, that sun in Virgo, having had the retrograde Mercury and that meeting, posing Neptune, squaring the galactic center, saying it's time to bring the change forward more. Okay, so that's the trine on September the 21st. Now, Pholus on that day is going to station direct, and I mentioned that earlier. So another planet or planetary body, let's say, stationing, not Nessus, sorry about that. Pholus will station direct on September the 21st as well, at 5 degrees Capricorn. Now, he moves really slowly. He's got like a 91-year orbit or something like that. So he's been hovering between 5 and 7 and 8 degrees for quite some time. But 5 is a number of change as well. It's also a very Venusian number. It's now things start to move forward with what has been revealed, what that domino effect, the Pandora's box, what's been revealed, things start to really move forward with Pholus going direct. Could be more things being revealed as well. All right, so then on September the 22nd, we actually have the first quarter moon. Moon square sun. So this is the crisis in action. We started with that new moon, 21 degrees Virgo. Now the moon has moved to the anaretic degree, conjunct the galactic center of Sagittarius, square to the sun at the anaretic degree of Virgo. Mutable signs, anaretic degree, bit like being at the border crossing, change, ready to change. And so this is a big point of change. Also tension, though. The anaretic degrees, the last degrees of the signs, can be a little bit tense. That might be a day that feels a little bit anxious, but there'll be a lot of information coming in about what you want to start creating when the sun, the very next day, moves into Libra and the moon moves into Capricorn, saying, right, get starting, because we're in the waxing moon stage of take action. All right. So then, yeah, September the 23rd, the very next day, the moon will have moved into Capricorn and the sun moves into Libra. So bye-bye Virgo season, happy birthday Libras. And that, you know, is going to really emphasize that energy of justice with Pallas Athena now in there. The sun's going to quite quickly catch up to Pallas Athena, so we'll look at that. But yeah, you get the idea. On that day as well, Chiron, we've not talked about Chiron a lot. Chiron and talk to the hand asteroid Lilith, who really is like the rebellious teenager. I am not going to submit. I am not going to lie down, is opposing Chiron. And of course, Mars is going to come up to that as well. Then the sun as well is going to come up to this opposition. I do wonder if there's going to be something around women's health and women's rights coming up, and women saying, hey, we're not going back, you know, anywhere. And we are going to take a stand. We are going to go no. If you look at the symbol of asteroid Lilith, she's very much like, that doesn't work for me. Talk to the hand. Okay. So she's, that's going to be an interesting opposition. At the same time, Venus is making this aspect as well. She's going to sextile asteroid Lilith and Mars and trine Chiron, the key to healing. You know, I don't think the divine feminine, for want of a better word, she's saying, no, I'm not going back. I'm not being put in the corner. I'm rising, and you are not going to do this. But of course, we've had the resistance, which is what we've been seeing happening in the world. But I think we're going to be good. So on September the 26th, actually, I will look at this one. Pallas Athena in Libra, wise justice goddess in the sign of justice, will square off to very newly direct Pholus, and still at 5 degrees because he moves so slow. More revelation, more news of saying, yeah, but this, we're going to bring the justice now. At the same time, on the 26th, the sun is over here in Libra now and will square Vesta. So that's got something to do with states, with the hearth, and with security as well. The sun will square off to Vesta on that day as well. On September the 26th too, Mercury will oppose Nessus again. Remember, 3 times, and you know, probably even more revelations coming out. And then also on September the 26th, Mars will join asteroid Lilith. And, you know, it may feel a little bit like this rising divine feminine is under attack from the patriarchy again, but she's going, talk to the hand. This doesn't work for me. On September the 27th, near the end of the month now, Venus will conjunct Juno again. Yes. So they kind of swapped places for a little bit there, but now they've moved on. Last time they met was at 13 degrees. Now they've moved on it to 21 degrees. We can see here that Venus is still pretty slow though, and Juno is fast for her, but Venus is the faster moving planet generally, so she's going to move forward. Now, you know, not to get too technical, but look at the degrees. This is all around 21, 22 degrees. It's really it's in a sextile aspect to this Mars asteroid Lilith conjunction. They're kind of all ganging up a little bit on the Guardian or the God of War as well, saying we've had enough. You know, let's change this. Fire and air, let's burn it down and create something new ideas. There's you know, quite a dance going on there. Then on to September the 28th, the sun will come up and square Pholus too. So there's definitely this air of more revelations again at the end of the month. And then asteroid Hygeia. Oh, right, we're flipping forward to September the 29th. We're nearly at the very end. Hygeia will station direct at 10:53 a.m. Shortly afterwards, Venus will square off to Uranus again. So let's get that one exact, because this is another triple aspect that we've had through this so powerful Venus retrograde journey that we've been on. So look at this. 22, 22, 22, 22, master number, master builder, all kind of speaking to each other, saying, are you ready to kind of build this new thing that you've been working on creating? Hecate's at the crossroads, the lamp saying, yes, this is the way forward. Juno, the sacred contracts or sacred marriage asteroid of all our relationships. This is a powerful, powerful square. But Venus squared off to Uranus on August the 9th and July the 2nd. So this is continuing a story that began before her retrograde journey. What big changes are you making? What big ahas have you been having? What about liberation? Where do you want to liberate yourself? Where do you want to create liberation? Where do you want to create major change and innovation, new ideas, all that kind of energy coming forward? And at 22 degrees, you know, I'm just like, oh my goodness, what are, you know, but it is the master builder number, okay? It brings together the spiritual and the material, the 22. It's a very powerful number. And 2 is the divine feminine, really. So this is a double 2, the divine feminine rising up again. But the 22 really connects us to the spiritual plane and helps us to find purpose in our existence. 22 channels cosmic wisdom down to earth and uses it to turn dreams into reality. So are you seeing a theme here? You know, as we finish the month. And then on September the 29th, Venus catches up to Hecate exactly again, very late in the day, and she's going to move on. but not till next month. So really, we finish the month with that. Mercury as well is going to trine Uranus. So Mercury's joining that party. So let's have a little look at that as well. Mercury will leave the degree he's stationed retrograde at, ready to kind of really change things up from what he's learned from the retrograde, or what they've learned from the retrograde. So Mercury will get to that 22nd degree as well, and will trine Uranus. And that's invention. That is new ideas. That is like going, I really have a feeling that some big new kind of invention is coming. That's going to be to do with clean energy, and also perhaps our monetary systems. But to go back to what I was talking about, that energy, that phase change, you know, astrologers don't know when the age, or don't agree, shall we say, when the age of Aquarius is starting. But it is starting. We're moving rapidly into it right now. So, you know, it's anyway, yeah, it's a great time to be alive, really. A challenging time, but everything is changing, and we're in a point of change at the moment. But I think we're in it for the whole decade as well, though. So don't just think it's going to come today. But all these are pointing towards it. I think new ideas, new inventions are coming up like crazy. I want to look at this, though. The moon, we started the month with the moon in Aries. We finish it with the month with the moon in Aries, sorry. But look at all this as well at 24 degrees. 6 is a very creative number as well. Eris shaking things up, Uranus shaking things up, but amazing opportunities to take big leaps, to create something really amazing and new, and to start moving into the new paradigm, at least doing your part. All right then, everybody, that's September. It's, you know, a pretty big month, quite a few planetary shifts of direction, and also a real opportunity to kind of really push forward and start creating your heart's desire. And I don't mean in a horrible kind of push kind of way. It's just like a boost. It's like saying, yes, I can do this. I can create whatever it was that I am wanting to create. So until next time, please don't forget to subscribe and give me a thumbs up, and I will see you on the next video. Much love to you.